To what lengths should our government be allowed to go to conduct surveillance and to protect national security? And what I've learned over the last month is that they're willing to go to some very disturbing lengths. Well, I think we should talk a little bit about the trust issue. Because that's a big issue. What our government is effectively doing is spending $20 billion a year on programs that allow them to conduct surveillance, and they're using that money to force services like mine and software that is published and bought and downloaded and technology that is produced. They're spending that money on ways to break it. They're spending that money on figuring out clever ways of embedding vulnerabilities into those products and services so that they can conduct surveillance. And the problem is, when you get a business like mine, for example, that was geared around or built around being private and secure, you don't want to be using those products. And if you don't know which products are vulnerable and which products are actually secure, you have to start to assume that everything that is American made could be compromised by the American government. And that's a pretty scary prospect. You know, we're already learning about a number of very popular products and software packages and physical devices that, you know, the government has managed to influence in ways to make them less secure, and, you know, do things in a certain way so that they can conduct surveillance when, you know, a person of interest happens to be using some of these devices. And that's going to have a profound effect on the American technology sector. I mean, they're already estimating that, you know, things that are coming out about these online service, these cloud providers, which was a booming business here in the US, you know, we were effectively in a position to dominate that market. Well, people are pulling their data out of the United States as fast as they can, and for good reason. You know, we're on the verge of it becoming illegal for a European company to send private information to an American company. Wow. The only reason it could be done now is because there was an exemption in place, because privacy laws here in the U.S. aren't as strong as they are in the European Union, and with all of the revelations that are coming out, that exemption's on the verge of being revoked. Wow. And that was a hard-fought exemption and deal that was negotiated by the Department of Commerce. And, you know, they're estimating that it's going to cost $180 billion in lost revenue, or about 25% of the cloud service provider's current revenue over the next 3 years, just because of what was going on. So we're spending $20 billion on surveillance, and it's going to cost us at least another $180 billion, probably a lot more when it comes to software products and devices. I mean, things like smartphones and tablets. You know, you can't buy anything that was designed in the US, aka Apple. You know, how many other American companies are there? We talk about Qualcomm and Broadcom. Not to mention software companies like Microsoft. You know, anyone hear of them? You know, can we trust their products anymore? And people abroad, for very good reason, are realizing that they can't, and they shouldn't. And they're trying to figure out alternatives. And as soon as they do, that whole sector of our economy is going to tank. That's a big deal. Yeah. You know, especially for a government that is already borrowing money as fast as it can.
Definitely true. Now, is there any privacy left online in the United States, in your opinion?
Well, we've come to learn that about 75% of all the telecommunications here in the US are being tapped by our government. So the only way you get any privacy online is if you know how to use cryptography. How many people know how to effectively use cryptography? Because they're the only ones left that, you know, the government can't listen to. Wow. It's kind of scary. It's the people that need these tools and need the privacy the most happen to be the people that know the least about how to use cryptography. Lawyers, political activists, people of that nature. Cryptographers, well, they tend to leave us alone because they don't know what we're up to.
What do you hope the American people get out of your situation and what you had to go through?
I think people are starting to realize that there are things that are going on that they don't know about and that they might be uncomfortable with. And at least some of them are sort of assuming the worst, because everything that's come out is only kind of the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. I should say a big chunk of that iceberg has been revealed. I just don't think most Americans really understand how large this iceberg really is and how important some of the things, these issues are, and just to what lengths, really. I mean, that's the ultimate issue, is to what lengths should our government be allowed to go to conduct surveillance and to protect national security. And what I've learned over the last month is that they're willing to go to some very disturbing lengths to protect security and conduct surveillance, even on Americans. We used to think that there was a line that wouldn't be crossed domestically, right? It was one thing to conduct surveillance on enemies of state in foreign countries. And what we're learning is that they're taking those same methods and they're using them on Americans right here. And I have a real problem with that, personally, politically, ethically. And I have an even bigger problem with it when I'm being forced to accept and become a part of that apparatus, so to speak, and not be able to tell people about it. I mean, that's the real thing. I think this would be a very different debate if we actually respected the intention of the First Amendment, which was, if somebody thinks something bad is going on, if they think the government is violating the Constitution, they have the right to tell people that, and hope that the people will react. And that's what's being taken away from us with all this secrecy, is that our government has decided, well, they can violate the Constitution at will. They'll just make it illegal for anybody that knows about the violation to speak about it. That is completely contrary to the intent behind our First Amendment right and our Fourth Amendment right to privacy. We're kind of at a crucial point in time where we either decide that it's okay to have a big brother, or in the case of Obama, a little sister, or that, we really want those rights back. We really should have some expectation that when we're talking to people, when we're emailing people, when we're instant messaging people, when we're having a phone call or a video chat over the internet, that conversation is private, and that our government isn't listening. They're not recording. They're not using software to transcribe everything that's being said on every microphone and then scanning it with sophisticated software to look for, political dissidents.
Or any political threat that threatens their power legitimately, that they could always use and abuse. And we could only speculate what that power is being used for, but...
well, we don't have to speculate. I mean, we heard about what it was being used for, at LPAC, and it's probably not my place to really bring it up. But, I mean, think about it. Think about what this information is being used for abroad, in particular. Yeah. You don't get a knock on the door. You get something else coming through the front door.
Yeah. We cover the topic many times on our news organization, and sometimes it's surprising to see the answers we get from government officials like Obama's advisor, Robert Gibbs, who told us that the drone strike that killed a 16-year-old American citizen was justified because that 16-year-old American citizen had a bad father, Anwar al-Awlaki. So we see the connections. We see it all coming together. We're living in a very scary time. But also, with the internet, it seems like a double-edged sword, where we have all these horrible things being used technologically, but at the same time, the message and what's happening and the truth's coming out the same avenue. how do you see this progressing? Where do you see the future coming to with these two dueling opposing sides and technology advancing so rapidly?
There was a lot in there. And I guess what I'll start with is we need to remember the oath of office. You know, I shall protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Domestic enemies. That's what we're seeing. Domestic enemies to our own freedom, to our own constitutional right. And what's unfortunate is that the same people who are taking these oaths of office are the same people that are being used to break and violate our constitutional rights. The problem is, you know, they usually only see a very small piece of the overall puzzle, and they don't understand the implications of what they're being asked to do. So the rank and file haven't rebelled yet, and probably never will. And as a result, we've sort of had to rely on whistleblowers and media to sort of break the story for us. And you know, how long has this been going on? 7, 8, 9 years in some cases, and we're just finding out about it now. You know, we used to live in a world where the media was a little bit better about sniffing this stuff out, but you know, our government has just gotten so good at keeping secrets from people. I guess because they needed to keep things like nuclear launch codes a secret. Well, they're using the same processes that they use to hide the locations of nuclear missile silos and launch codes to protect what are effectively surveillance methods, because they're embarrassed by what they're doing. You know, I guess I can talk about another oath. I shall tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And at least in my opinion, metadata is data. So to say we're not collecting data on Americans and then turn around and find out that, well, we're collecting metadata, I mean, I'm thinking if you can't elaborate your distinction with your answer, either you're lying or you don't really have a good command of the English language.
I just wanted to say that truly, I and many other people see you as the Rosa Parks of the internet. You've made an incredible stand. You're facing a lot of opposition.
Rosa Parks of internet privacy, internet freedoms, you know.
Which is the most important part of the internet, which without it we have nothing, and it's advancing at such a high level that we need ethical people to make a stand. You are one of them. And
I think that's why the under 30 people that are closer to our age, you know, they realize just how much of their life is on the internet right now and how much of their life is electronic, and why there's such a big divide between, you know, people who understand what's going on and people who don't. And I think what we need to focus on now is reaching out to everyone and make them realize that, you know, even if you have nothing to hide, even if you're not doing anything illegal, you may have something embarrassing that you don't want our government to be able to hold over your head. And that's the key. And you know, like I said, my fight's going to be huge, and you know, I'm not going to be able to win it alone. I need support, both, you know, financially and politically. You know, contact your members of Congress, because even if I win my case, I'm only setting, while it could be a very important precedent regarding free speech and, you know, privacy on the internet, it won't address every possible way that they're attacking our privacy. And for that, for sort of this veil of secrecy to get lifted, you know, we really need Congress to act. We need probably a congressional investigation, because obviously the investigations that are being executed by the executive branch can't be trusted. You can't trust the fox to guard the hen house, so to speak. So, you know, I guess I talked about it earlier, and I'll plug it again. You know, go to lavabit.com, read what I wrote, and hopefully, you know, use the link at the bottom to make a donation, because, you know, we need your support.
Portion of the citizenry who is supportive of these policies, and therefore the controversies that were in the Bush years no longer exist.
Yeah. And my last question is, what words of advice would you give fellow independent journalists? What tips or...
Such evil is senseless. It's beyond reason. They were mothers and fathers. They were husbands and wives, sisters and brothers,